Hey everyone, my name's Zach, and today we're going to be talking about single recessive epistasis. So what is epistasis? Epistasis is where one gene masks or partially masks the expression of another gene. And so when this happens, phenotypes cannot be predicted in the usual Mendelian way, which is 9 to 3 to 3 to 1, which I'll explain a little bit later on. And so some genotypes can produce the same phenotype. So even though genetically they're different, they're going to look the same, and you'll see that later. And so specifically, we're going to talk about single recessive epistasis, which is where a homozygous recessive genotype of one gene affects the expression of another gene. So if there's a big A and a little a for one gene, the two different alleles, a little a is going to mask the expression of another one. And so it has a 9 to 3 to 4 phenotypic expression ratio, which we'll go into a little later. So for the example, we're going to be using My Hero Academia, which is a universe where people have something called quirks, which are basically different superpowers, and we'll get into that in the example here. So for our biological pathway, we have two different genes here. So we have the gene, the first one here, that's either you have a quirk or you don't have a quirk, and then the second one is an ice or a fire quirk. And so if you have a little a, then you will not have a quirk, but if a big A allele is present, then you'll move into our intermediate here, which is an ice quirk. And then if you have a big B present, you'll move on to have Hellflame, which is a fire quirk. But if you only have little b's, then you will have just an ice quirk. So for our first example, it's the classic example where both parents are heterozygous at both genes. And so over here, you can see some the example of frequencies that you'll get if these two are to cross. So you can see here that you can see how it's masked here. So it doesn't matter what alleles you have for the fire ice gene. If you have two little a's, it doesn't matter. You're still just going to be quirkless. So you can see here, instead of being 9 to 3 to 3 to 1, it's 9 to 3 to 4. And so now we're going to move on to an example where one parent is homozygous at one allele and heterozygous at another. And so you can see, since there's two, it's a half chance that you'll get a little a. It really changes up the frequencies, making it to where half of the children do not have quirks and the other half do, but they only have Hellflame because there's no way they can have a little b. And so here are my citations.